This is a board that is not constituted very frequently. It's only constituted when there is an appeal to the legislation in the Athens City Code on vending, an appeal to the code director's decision through the provision set forth in that particular portion of the code. So there are 5 members that are part of this board, and they include a business owner, if I'm not mistaken, a brick and mortar business owner, a vendor, 2 council members, and the service safety director that constitute the vending appeals board. So we need to quickly elect a chair, and so if anyone has a motion for a chair.
I move that we make Andy Stone chair.
Second.
Okay. Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed say nay. Okay,
All
Andy,
right,
take it
so
away.
I'll be the chair, and I believe we have one case here before the Board of Any Appeals, and if you, sir, would go ahead and state your name and the case that you're making to the board.
James Wonky, I represent Hot Shots Food Truck, Athens Local Food Truck LLC. I'm here to appeal a denial of a vending license on the basis that my truck is too large according to city code.
Okay.
Continue?
Sure, please.
Okay. So I really just have some talking points. I didn't write a whole speech. I came to listen. I'm hoping to hear from you what it's going to take to get a variance for my truck, and pursue all avenues on behalf of myself and my employees so that we can continue working and doing what we're doing, providing a service to Athens, and not trying to hurt anyone. The reason I'm here today, smaller truck isn't really an option for me. I'm pretty heavily invested in the truck we have currently. I manufacture all my products from raw ingredients. I'm not reheating anything. It's all food made from scratch using local ingredients. This means it's twice the work at twice the cost, and unfortunately it takes up twice the space. But people like to see it, and I think the difference shows, and I'm proud of what we produce. We are an Athens-only business, and I'm hoping that given the current situation on vending in Court Street, that you will allow me to occupy the vending spots on, I believe, East Union on Court. The majority, so, you know, I started off vending. I didn't have a generator. So I was setting up outside of our family business. My father and uncle owned Silver Serpent Exotic Gifts at 55 North Court Street, where I was able to get a direct utility hookup. The business on State Street is pretty much just a slow death for us right now. It's not enough to pay for employees or, you know, make any money, so it's not really feasible for us. We've been doing good on Union Street. After 2 weeks of vending uptown, I was able to get a generator, and we started going to the vending spots, hoping that we were going to get some less resistance there. And that wasn't the case, unfortunately. The majority of the violations that I got were in the spots where we want vendors to go. I just, through the application process, was denied a permit for vending. I pursued an appeal through the courts related to exemptions for small business manufacturers for vending, which is written into state law, and the local city code deviates from that slightly, and so I lost on that basis. I was made aware via the city prosecutor that this appeal was an option, and so as I told you before, I'm doing my due diligence. Responsibility I have to my employees to give them a stable living situation so that they can pay their bills and so that I can, you know, keep doing what I'm passionate about. So without further ado, I guess, you know, that's pretty much my case. If it's all right, I can give you these photos that I took. They were on 3 different days when we were vending uptown, if I may.
Certainly.
They pretty much show the vending spots, which are designated abandoned. You know, 9 out of 10 days we're up there. There's nobody else there. Only other person I've ever seen there since I've been vending there has been Cricket. She sets up next to us every now and then. We're hoping to be up there 7 days a week, and we're not trying to bother anybody. I think the only complaint that I've gotten uptown there is that our generator's a little loud, and that's something that I would like to continue to invest money in, maybe getting a quieter generator. But at the moment, given the unstable situation, that wasn't something I really felt comfortable sinking $5,000 into. But that is something that I can give you my commitment, as I can give you my commitment if you have any other concerns, to work my hardest to exist alongside the community and benefit it, rather than be a detriment.
Okay. Is that extent of your statement?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I have is just kind of a example layout of, you know, what my truck, what makes up that 28 feet. So 4 feet of that is the hitch, and the fuel tank. It's a structural part of the trailer. It's not really something I could change. Next 4 feet would be the sink and dish area. Next 4 feet is the door with a freezer opposite it. And then I do have it's a like little 4-foot storage area with a toilet. I don't use it all the time because it's, you know, a health thing. But, you know, when I'm out and about and at events and festivals, I have to live out of that truck sometimes. Not just me, but sometimes up to 2 or even 3 employees over the course of a weekend. And so that's pretty necessary space for us too. It's also where we carry our generator. So besides that, we have about 12 feet of cooking space. On one side, it's made up with a fryer, a range, and a flat top. On the other side, it's 2 line coolers and a 6-foot prep table that serves as both our prep area and a register. So if that's giving you any idea of just how tight that space is, it really is tight. I mean, even having 2 people in there feels like too much sometimes. It's barely enough to keep up with making food. I think, you know, the big thing is us making everything. I've got our recipes and stuff here. Make over 30 menu items from all of our breads and biscuits down to the sauces. We process all the meats ourselves and process all the vegetables as well. So I guess if you think it's of any use, I could, you know, show it to you, but that was just to kind of make the point. That's really all that I have. You know, I don't have much of another option if this fails, so I don't really know what I'm going to do if I can't vend uptown.
So for members of the board, the basis of the denial was the way that the code reads about the size of a vending apparatus that can be used in the city's A and B spaces, the public spaces that have been designated for vending. And the size that restriction in the code is 8 feet wide by 10 feet tall by 20 feet long. And that's what the code says. And so the code director was required to basically refuse it because this particular vehicle is 28 feet long, so it's longer. It goes beyond one space in one of those. I believe, just my cursory look at the history of the only other time in recent history that the Board of Vending Appeals has met to grant a variance, it was a height variance and maybe I'm incorrect.
It was a length variance.
It was a length variance, okay.
It was only, about a foot or foot and a half longer.
Gotcha.
It was the Dr. Mays
Okay.
truck.
Okay, that was,
They got
yeah.
like a unit on the back. Can't remember if it's a battery thing or an exhaust or something, but it sticks out beyond what they originally had said the length would be, because it's sort of like scabbed onto the truck.
Gotcha.
You said the length was 10 feet, isn't it 20?
It's 20 feet long, 10 feet tall,
Yeah.
8 feet wide is the restriction of the code.
Well, and I think Dr. May did something with her front bumpers and stuff to also squish it down.
Okay.
And so there was a good faith.
So
apart.
from my Boogie on the Bricks days, I'm remembering parking spaces are about 20 feet long.
They're about.
Right, that's the
Yeah.
size of the space. Okay.
Yeah, some are 22. I think probably the shortest one we have, and they're painted, they're on the street and they measure them out. Some are 22, most of them are 20. I think we may have a couple 19 where they're at an end of a block in order to try to fit one more, but by and large, they're in the 19 to 22 feet range.
Forgive me, tell me your name again, I'm sorry.
James Wonky.
Wonky?
Yep.
Do you have a picture of your truck?
It is, yeah, I could pull one up on my phone.
Is it?
Oh, it's in the
Yeah.
paper.
It is that. And, you know, just for reference, at the time that was taken, parking enforcement told me that I couldn't have my vehicle there, so I don't park my vehicle, next to the trailer.
So you have a tow vehicle and you bring it up and you
I move
park
it.
the trailer and then you put the tow vehicle somewhere else?
Yes.
So, if you didn't get it in space, given the size, it'd be pretty hard to get that thing back out of there, right? If there were another vendor there.
So I haven't run into an issue where we've even really been set up to another vendor that took up an entire space. Cricket has set up next to us a couple times, on the side opposite our generator. And, I mean, I understand this may not be entirely relevant, but I did get several yellow curb violations, dismissed in the Athens court, because of a parking stipulation regarding oversized vehicles not being required to fit within the lines. But I try my best to fit and not bother anybody.
Are all of the permits out, I mean, subscribed, or I don't know what the word would be?
So, and I know that Member Crowell can probably speak a little bit more about the revisions we made to the code a few years ago, but basically it changed from being rented annually to rented monthly. And so to say whether they're all out in the month of October, I don't know. I know that, you know, at least my cursory observation is that they haven't been full, basically, in the month of October. And I don't know, I'm sure during the pandemic, they were probably not sold very frequently because you didn't have students in session. But I don't believe they're all out at the moment.
If I may, I know that of the 14 vendors that participated in the rules changes in 2018, I was told that they're all out of business now. And as far as I know, there's the Dr. May's Thai Kitchen, who doesn't really move around anymore. I haven't talked to them, but so I can't speak for them or anything. I can't really speak for anybody else, but I know Chelsea's Real Food. Those are the only 3 trucks I'm aware of that are still in operation. I've seen the Burrito Buggy do events, but I've never seen any other food truck up in those spaces with me.
I've seen Kona Ice. I've been vending up there for 3 months now, under the monthly situation.
Okay.
So there's 10 spaces, there's 200 feet.
Yeah, certainly the pandemic had a significant change on tendency of people to go up there, hopefully with people back in school now, you know, there's more of a.
And I would say, you know, even though I'm not, you know, the costs for mobile food vending are not low. You know, we spend a lot of time moving around to and from events and locations, packing up, unpacking, that where we're not necessarily serving food and we're not making money. And so, you know, I would say, relatively speaking, our costs of operation are a little higher than brick and mortar business. But that, you know, I would be willing, if it was absolutely necessary, to pay for more than one spot. I mean, it's better than going out of business entirely. It's not preferable for me. But if it's the deal breaker, then I'm happy.
Well, that was
to
one
do
of
it.
my questions, because it's not like you're just a small amount larger than well, you're almost a third
Yeah.
larger, so.
So if that's what it takes, and that's why I'd like to hear from you guys. I mean, I'm here to work with you, so I'm here to do what I need to do to get in compliance.
There's not a provision in the code for you know, the renting of multiple spaces, but I don't think there's also there's no prohibition of it either. You know, to say that you could rent 2 spaces, the only prohibition is that the vending vehicle can't be longer than 1, but I suppose if you had 2 spaces, you know, and you just, you know, if granted an appeal
Yeah.
for the vehicle, you could make the appeal contingent upon, you know, renting 2 spaces, basically.
So I thought about this from a number of different, and you know, Mr. Ronke, the quality of your food and the local, you know, purchasing and preparation, you know, that's all great. It's not in my mind pertinent to this conversation, which is about infrastructure. But I really appreciate that you have that, your food and the local nature of your preparation and your employees. But really thinking about infrastructure, I came to the same sort of question, I'm sure we all did, is, okay, what about renting 2 spaces, right? That would accommodate this issue. You know, one day, as I think you've heard at council, we get back to a situation where we have a robust vending, situation. I don't know how one licensee having 2 spaces impacts the ability of another vendor to come in and join the community. So that's one thing I was thinking. The other thing, and something that I think the code office did, that's not in the ordinance, not in code, is, as they have the right to administer the sort of spaces, it used to be that you got assigned a specific space. You're probably aware of this, right? Alibaba had what we call the first space right there by the corner because they had been doing this longer than anybody else. And that was sort of understood that during the hours of operation, that first space. The code office went away with that specific reservation system, partially because NISAR is no longer able to engage in these activities. And so right now, anybody can come up and be in any of those spaces. They're not assigned a space. But something else that I was thinking.
It's first come, first serve.
Right,
Great.
thank you, Cricket. One thing that I was thinking that could be considered is that there could be an oversized space, right? Now, I would say to Mr. Wonky that were I to want to do vending in the city of Athens, I probably would have started before I purchased my unit to make sure it fit what was currently, or had the conversation prior to trying to have an appeals process, just because not knowing how that might go for me. So you do have a large unit, larger than any of the other units, and I'm not against accommodating perhaps a larger unit in this way, and that there could be a larger vending space, right? Now, I don't know if that would be, the ideal spot right by the corner, by the alumni gate, or it would be on the other end by the class gate. I think it would have to be on one of the ends.
I've given some thought to this, if you want to.
Please.
The truck is wider than 8 feet also. And I have had nothing but really good rapport with the owner and all their workers, cooperative. I'd say, well, I'd like this spot, and they say, okay, we'll save it for you, or we'll move, or what. It's all been totally cooperative. But I think something would be really good, since vehicles have to turn the corner to get on Union. If we had 4 spaces and then a double space, and then the remainder of spaces. And that way, we wouldn't have any traffic squeeze, potential danger. I vend, and it's not a destination. If people see me, they come to if that's what they want, to look at jewelry. But if I'm on the other side of a big truck, no one will see me. Mm-hmm. So if we would do like 2 spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are double, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think everybody could live together happily with that. And that's an idea.
That's good that you've thought through this, and I appreciate that. Again, it would not be, I think, and this is the way the code enforcement office would like to manage these spaces, I believe. It would not be your space, right? So if somebody else had a big truck and they came in earlier than you did and they were in the large space, that's sort of the way it's been down there, is who it first come, first served.
Recently, certainly.
Right.
That's how handicap spaces are right now, is if you have a handicap sticker that's not your handicap space, it's a handicap space, and if you have one, you're able to use it.
Right. So that's something I think this I don't know if this board would have, if we're just considering his appeal or we're trying to find solutions to the problem.
Yeah.
It seems like you have to pass legislation to make a real solution.
Yeah.
I think this board is just involved in the idea of a variance or not a variance.
Okay, so to that point, with my other thinking, obviously preparing for this meeting, is that the idea, obviously, it's quite clear of the ordinance and the size of a vending truck is to fit the space. And it's quite clear that his doesn't fit the space. So there's no way for him to vend in a space without continuing to get cited by code for exceeding into another space. So I mean, in that sense, like I said, there could be some changes to code that comes through council, but on the basis of this appeal, you know, that's a problem.
Yeah, it is.
So if I may, I'm not against participating in any sort of dialogue about changes we can make to the vending code. I am here today to ask for variance and whether or not I have to tell my people to find different jobs or not starting this week. Because I can't help them pay their bills going into the holidays, if we can't operate.
Yeah, I think that, you know, this board has granted variances to size in the past, just not to the size of something to this extent. So it's not without precedent to issue size. I think we could probably place conditions on the appeal. That the appeal would be granted under the condition that X, Y, and Z were met. For instance, that you rented 2 spaces, that you were not in the first, that you didn't use the first 4 in so as to block access to some of the smaller, you know, whether it be you or whether it would be another entity. You know, if we were in a situation where you know, every single one of those spaces were sought after because there was a high demand at the moment for vending, I think it would be more problematic. And maybe a third condition in that regard would be something to the effect of,
Having to be renewed.
they always have to be renewed. I mean, every month you gotta be renewed, but if there
No,
were,
the appeal has, like, every year you have to.
well, I don't know about that, but I mean, like if there were 9 people, you know, if they all
Yeah,
buy a
but
ticket for a
9
month, then
vendors
it
can't.
bumps that extra one. You don't
Right.
get to have 2, so somebody else can't have 1, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Does that make sense? But,
Also, just to the same point, you know, this solution, whether it's temporary or longer term, would also allow you to utilize all 3 current vending locations in town. There are at least 2 spots, I think, on Armory Drive. There are 2 across from Bentley, whatever we call that, North Richland or Lower Court
Yeah.
or Congress. And then, of course, in front of on East Union. So if he had, and we allowed him to utilize 2 spaces, he could still try any of those locations.
Yeah.
I know that you've had success, obviously, in regular city parkings, as you testified. You know, I was thinking that the spots on the Armory, I'm sure you're aware, you know, that's closer to that location where you're having success on the corner of
Well,
Mill
like I
Court.
said, the majority of my violations were at the spots where
Okay.
vendors
Okay.
are on Union Street.
I've seen you.
I mean, that's where I've been setting up for the majority of the time.
Okay.
Because I was hoping to get
Right.
less resistance. Like I said, I had to buy a generator to get to where I could do that.
Okay. Have you had any conversations with like the owners of the gas station about parking on private
Yeah,
property?
so because my family owns a business across the street, he kind of sees this as competition, and it's my understanding that he's in the process of selling the gas station, so I don't know.
Okay,
It's
I mean,
a rumor or
that's the other
not,
thing, is a
yeah.
private property location where you.
Yeah, so yes, I did approach him, and the answer was no.
You have a peddler license right now, right?
Correct, because my vendor license was denied.
Right, so, and he does have a peddler.
And I also have my health department certification, and the state tax license.
East Union spaces.
And something that came to mind that I didn't really get time to interject. I have no problem revisiting it if it becomes an issue of space. I really, on days where there might be, if there is 3 other people vending there, that might be a day where we decide not to even go, because I don't think that there may not even be enough business to really make it worth all that many people going up there. As Cricket attested to, I have no problem cooperating with anybody. Like, I certainly see it from the perspective of a small business owner. In the instances where we've interacted, I've ceded, the nearer position because people have no problem seeing me. I realize that, we should work together, and that, that makes it possible for both of us to do well. So I don't see that as, really impacting me negatively if I have to slide down. I would ask that, rather than having it be like the set 4 and 5 spot being, where I have to be, that just, I'm able to kind of slide in after whoever is setting up there. If I could just go ahead and set up in the 2nd or 3rd spot, and, because I haven't run into a situation where there's been 2 other people there. We've exchanged numbers to the effect that, you let me know when you're coming up and we'll slide down for you. So I don't have any issue communicating with other vendors who, may want us to work with them, and I have no issue doing that.
Well, Mr. Wonky, I don't know how long your association with the City of Athens has been. Pre-COVID, there were regularly 4 or 5 vendors at least. Now, we do have 10 spots there, so there's plenty of room. But there have been regularly much more than 3. When we would encourage you to add your trucks, even if there are 4 or 5 there, or your truck. What I envision is, what I always enjoyed was going up there and having lots of choices. I thought it was an exciting part of Athens. So, I guess that's all I had to.
So I guess, any other thoughts from the members here? I would, like to entertain a motion to approve the appeal under the following conditions. Number 1, that Mr. Wonky, in order to vend from the 28-foot long vehicle that he is seeking to vend from, he must purchase or rent 2 spaces, A or B spaces, in any given month that he's using it. Number 2, that he not block smaller vendors, particularly in the East Union location. And that, I think, would speak to that particular area, since it is a larger truck and has the potential of blocking the visibility from smaller vendors. He would have to move, so he may not block them. He would have to be east of those. And then number 3, if there were enough vendors such that all 10 spaces could be sold in a given month, the second space would be refunded to him, and he would not be able to use it in that given month. But I don't, like I said, you'd have to have 10 people coming and trying to rent for that given month. And then, and maybe this doesn't need to be a condition, but all other aspects of the code have to be followed, and that probably goes without saying. So I would entertain a motion to that.
If I could ask a question before we get there,
Yes.
there was some indication that the wagon in question here is actually wider than 8 feet as well. Are we considering that? I mean, the length is simply space consideration. The width is safety consideration,
I would
right?
suggest that if the code office did not find that to be a violation, then it's not something for the board to take up.
Okay.
And my understanding is that it was not wider than 8 feet, that the refusal was based upon the 28-foot length, that it was 8 feet wide, and meant that.
Fine, I thought somebody mentioned that it might be wider, but
Oh, you had said that you thought it was wider than 8 feet. Have you measured the width of the?
So I haven't measured it. I would say it's pretty close to 8 feet.
Yeah, a lot of things are. I mean, a tractor trailer is 8 feet wide.
vehicle,
that'd be
yeah.
all my only concern, is extending too far out of the roadway.
Sure.
Chief Reimer might
You
say
gotta
no,
figure the
thank you.
code office measured it.
I think when I saw the refusal, it was based upon the length.
Fine with me.
So, Mr. Chair, to your second point, your second condition on there, I think you're making murky law, and I
Yeah.
think you should probably not try to make that. Would it be easier just to say he's gonna take the 2 easternmost spaces? And then you've got something that's fairly concrete. Is that,
Easternmost available spaces?
So the only thing I would say is what I was saying before is if, you know, if having to set all the way up down at the end of the street, if there's nobody else, you know, we don't typically get up there until, you know, 9 or 10. I think the spot's open at like 6 or 4 a.m. actually, I think, I'm not sure. But yeah, I have no issue working with people, and I give you my word that I'll, you know, extend my phone number to any other vendor that has a concern, and if I know they're gonna be setting up, I'll leave space for them.
I appreciate you saying that, and I fully believe that you will, but from a matter of, you know, issuing a direction from this board and a condition on an appeal, I mean, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then somebody else could come and take over, and they may not be nearly as cooperative as you are. So we need to probably be clear. Go ahead.
So part of the hot shot trucks business is non-destination also. So when people see it, then they think, well, I'll go and have a meal there. Through time, you build up a clientele that expect you to be there. And it's been just hit or miss if they find me there, and they're able to come and look at my jewelry or whatever. But so I think if you move hot shot to the far end, it would be probably too far away.
Okay.
I think there's, and the more the merrier vendors up there. If we had 4 or 5 regular, that would be a hot spot. And I think they cried when Wendy's was built because, oh, McDonald's will lose all the business. Well, both of them made twice as much as they planned to make because there were 2 options there. So,
okay, well, I mean, I won't draw the objection. I
Yeah.
just would like to make it as clear as we can. But,
Yeah.
you know, if it's not practicable, then.
Well, and I think it would be, you know, if we put it in the terms of may not block smaller vehicles to the west.
How about I
May not be
don't
west
take the
of Florida.
first spot?
Yeah,
'Cause
may-
then that way it's always open for at least one other vendor.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Cricket's there and then there's another vendor with a smaller vehicle, then I think it's probably, the condition would be, you know, may not be west of smaller vehicles, because we're basically granting you a variance to have a vehicle larger than what is permitted in the code. So you may not have you may not block somebody west, you may not be west of smaller vehicles, smaller vendors on the East Union Street spots.
So I have no issue with that whatsoever. I'm just beating the dead horse at this point, and maybe, you know, could you add a stipulation that if they show up after me,
Just gonna
that
say, they
they
get there
could
first.
ask me to, or something? That way it's like I don't get a code violation just for, like, if they don't
Yeah,
have a
oh, I
problem with it. Like,
Right, no, I understand what you're
and
saying.
that's where I'll open dialogue with them. Hey, if you're coming
If
again
we're-
and you want to be first, no problem.
If requested,
Yeah,
yeah, by smaller vehicles, you must move east.
yep.
And that would be the
Sounds good to
stipulation.
me.
All right. So let's try this again. I'd request a motion that we approve the appeal under the following conditions. Mr. Wonky, with this particular vehicle, must rent 2 spaces for the month. If requested, must move east if on the East Union Street locations. And then if enough vendors purchase spaces for a month such that the East Union spaces would be full, we would refund one of the 2 spaces to him because,
or give them an option to have a 1-space.
yeah, one space truck of some
Cart
sort.
or
Correct,
whatever, so.
correct.
Do we want to say contiguous spaces?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you rent 2, you rent 2. I mean, he can't break his trailer into 2 parts to occupy 2 different locations, I think. Can I have that, did that make sense?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the chair's recommendation.
Second?
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't believe there's any other business for this board today. I would request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.